Good morning and welcome to the Jon DiVito Show. Today I'm going to be doing another show on the Pamela Smart case. And as many of you know, I have been in conversations with Pamela Smart in prison in Bedford, New York. And she and I have talked for about a year via email. And one of the things that I said to her in my emails is that, and she knows this very clearly, that obviously the biggest issue that she had in her case were the Cecilia Pierce tapes. So, as many of you know, some of you may not know if you're new to this case, Pamela Smart was accused of conspiring to murder her husband, Gregory Smart, in New Hampshire back in 1990. Pamela Smart had an affair with a high school student, William Flynn, and she was accused of using techniques to manipulate William Flynn to convince him to kill her husband, Greg Smart, who had been unfaithful to her. And allegedly, Pamela Smart was worried about losing everything she owned and went through an elaborate scheme to have her husband murdered. Now, Pamela Smart has been in prison since 1990. She has been vilified by the people of New Hampshire. And one of the things that's hard for me to understand is that with Pamela Smart being found guilty of conspiring to kill her husband, Greg Smart. Now, she never physically harmed him. She was not part of the group that went and murdered her husband. It was William Flynn and three of his friends went to Gregory Smart's house, Pamela Smart's house, got him in the foyer of the home. He was forced to his knees, held at knife point, and then allegedly William Flynn shot Gregory Smart point blank in the head. So the thing I've always had trouble with is whether or not you believe Pamela Smart. Now, again, I've listened to her, and she has been very consistent when I speak to her. She has admitted from day one that the affair was a mistake. She has never denied that she had an affair with William Flynn. Pamela Smart was 22 at the time. William Flynn was 16 at the time. Her husband had recently cheated on her, and she was heartbroken. And she admits fully that she made a huge lapse in judgment by having an affair with William Flynn. Now, the thing that still confuses me is William Flynn and the other three people who went to the Smart's home and shot Gregory Smart point blank in the head. They're all free. They've been free for quite some time. The gunman, I don't care if he was 16 years old, 26 years old. At the age of 16, it doesn't matter what your circumstances are. You know whether it's right or wrong to hold the gun to somebody's head and shoot them. Now, the gunman is free. He's off living his life. And the woman that was convicted of, in my opinion, I still use allegedly, but she was convicted of conspiring to murder her husband. She is in prison for life. So, like I've said to her on more than one occasion, no matter how I look at this, if she is guilty of everything they said, and she did everything they said, she denies that she played any part at all in conspiring to kill her husband. But even for argument's sake, if she's guilty of everything she did, doesn't she deserve freedom? Doesn't she deserve a chance at freedom, being that the gunmen and the killers are actually free? So the other side of that is now think for a second, maybe everyone got it wrong. Maybe Pamela Smart had sex with William Flynn, but did not play a part in conspiring to kill her husband. If that's the case, this woman has been in prison for over 30 years for having an illicit affair with someone that she should not have. So either way, I mean, the latter scenario is very troubling to think of because that means she's been in prison for over 30 years for a crime she did not commit. But even the first scenario, if she is guilty of everything that's been said about her, the four gunmen, the four killers are out. They're free. So the person that killed her husband, put the gun to his head and shot him and killed him is free, living with a girlfriend, has a family, and Pamela Smart is still in prison. Now, one of the things that I said to Pamela in prison, and she very well knows this, is that the Cecilia Pierce tapes are what condemned her. I mean, she went into a series of meetings with Cecilia Pierce. That she is one of the female students that was involved in this group of friends Now, Cecilia Pierce was wired. The government had her wired. Pamela Smart maintains that she knew that Cecilia Pierce was wired, and the police were telling her nothing. They weren't giving her information. She was distraught that Gregory Smart had been murdered, and she was looking to get information from Cecilia Pierce. And she knew when she went in to meet with her, her lawyer told her that Pierce was going to be wearing a tape or a wire. So she knew that. So I'm going to read a little bit about Cecilia Pierce so you know who she is. And then I'm going to get into the statement that I received from Pamela Smart that explains what happened in this scenario with the tapes. Okay? So this is just, I'm going to read a little bit about Cecilia Pierce so you know who she is, you understand the relationship, and then I'm going to go directly into Pamela Smart's statement that she made to me that explains what happened that day. And it tells us how the jury got it wrong. So you can make your decision as to what you think. I'm just putting the information out there. And it's something I think we all need to look at again. So in November of 1989, Pierce became an intern with the Media Center and was assigned to Smart. According to the Derry Police Department supplement report, it was during this internship that she became good friends with Smart. Pam befriended her, said Wojcik, and that's Linda Wojcik, Pam's mother. She felt very badly. Cecilia was a chunky girl, failing in most of her subjects. Smart, in an interview with Derry Police, stated Pierce was a good kid who looked up to her. Pierce had known William Flynn through high school, and both were involved in the Project Self-Esteem class. Through the class, Smart, Flynn, and Pierce worked on an orange juice commercial together, along with Rachel Edmond and Tracy Collins. According to Wojcik, Smart's own self-esteem was at a low point during this period. She was incredibly responsible in the workplace, but she was incredibly socially immature, said Wojcik. Again, that's Pamela's mother. Greg Smart came to her and told her that he had cheated on her. She was teaching a course on self-esteem when her self-esteem was in the basement. According to Pierce, in the trial testimony, Smart and Flynn were originally just friends. She first noticed a change around February when Smart confessed to Pierce that she loved Bill. She sat me down in a chair, said Pierce in her testimony. She said, I think I'm in love with Bill. Pierce thought it was ridiculous at first. I think Cecilia may have had a crush on Bill, said Smart in a prison interview. Maybe she became jealous of me, and that might have been a possible motive for her helping the state. About a week later, Smart told Flynn that she loved him. According to Pierce's trial testimony at this time, Smart had also told Pierce that she had a choice either to kill Greg or to get a divorce. Now, here's a section titled An Accomplice to Murder. Pierce stayed over at Smart's house on numerous occasions, sometimes for week-long stretches at a time. I guess my question is, where were Cecilia Pierce's parents? According to the Derry Police Department report, the first of these visits occurred in April of 1990. She also stayed from April 23rd to April 27th. It was during this visit that Flynn came over. This was the first time that Flynn and Smart had sexual intercourse, according to Pierce. According to Pierce's trial testimony, the visit occurred 1 week before Greg's death. Flynn stayed at Smart's house along with Pierce on Tuesday of this week. We rented 2 movies, said Pierce in her testimony. We watched 9.5 weeks, and then Bill and Pam went upstairs, and I stayed downstairs and watched another movie. Pierce was getting bored, so she went upstairs to check on Smart and Flynn. She found them on the floor of the bedroom having sex. According to the Derry police report, Smart told police on almost a daily basis that she was going on in the planning of Greg's death. In the report, Pierce states that she was present on occasions when Smart and Flynn were discussing the details of the plans to murder Greg. She, Pierce, knew everything was going on, and Raymond Fowler, who rode along in the car with Flynn, Patrick Randall, and Vance Lattamy on the night of Greg's murder. So then we get into the wiretaped conversations. Wiretaped conversations between Pierce and Smart occurred on 4 separate dates in 1990. Those dates were June 19th, July 12th, and 13th, and August 1st. The tapes of these conversations are difficult to hear in many places, and numerous transcript passages obtained by the Equinox are labeled as inaudible. The tape was garbled. I barely heard, said Wojcik. They were crackling, distorted, and not at all good quality. During Smart's trial, transcripts were provided as well as the headphones, but the sound quality remained questionable. I couldn't hear anything, said Smart. We all had headphones, jurors too. No one could hear. Bill Smart threw down his earphones as the tapes were played in the trial and said, I can't hear these damn things, said Wojcik. Paul Maggiato, prosecutor for the case, acknowledged the poor tape quality. When we first listened to the tapes, they were very difficult to hear, said Maggiato. We recorded it through speakerphone to a handheld recorder. I would have done it differently. It wasn't the best conditions, but the tapes speak for themselves. The first of these three wiretaps was a series of telephone communications between 2:55 p.m. and 3:50 p.m. on June 19th. Throughout the tape, Smart speaks rapidly and sounds increasingly frantic and nervous. Quote, I was on Prozac, so I was hyper, said Smart. I was talking really fast, and I already talked fast. I was out of it. According to Wojcik, that again is Pamela Smart's mother, Smart's Prozac dosage was incorrect. Pam was on Prozac. She weighed 102 to 105 pounds, said Wojcik. She was little and had a much higher dosage. It made her manic, talking extremely fast. Towards the end of the first conversation on June 19th, Pierce began to ask Smart, but listen, if they find out that I lied to you, I'm going to be charged with blank, question mark. Smart interrupts, you're not going to be lying for me. You didn't lie about anything. You don't know anything. What the hell's the problem? Smart abruptly ends the conversation when Pierce mentions Smart could have just gone to a divorce instead. She makes an inaudible comment about her phone before ending the conversation. Sisti, and that was Pamela Smart's defense attorney, called and said, don't talk to Cecelia, said Smart. Then I went and called her. What kind of retard does that? Question mark. Smart called Pierce back at 3:04 p.m. and again spoke rapidly and frantically. They, being the Derry police, going to try to get you to talk and to confess. And you know they're going to say, we know you know, and all of that, you know. Try to make you nervous, but all you have to do is maintain the same story you know, and that's it. That you know, you don't know, and that's it, you know. I called Cecelia because I wanted information, said Smart. I wanted to know if Bill Flynn killed Greg. Smart continues to talk with an increasing speed and explains hypothetical scenarios to Pierce. So this is a quote by Pam Smart in these tapes. But I don't think you should be nervous because, realize that just then, if they start telling you, look, well, this person says, Bill was at your house at 10 p.m. at this time, whatever you say, well, Bill's obviously lying because he's on trial for his life, and that's it. The police are going to realize that Bill or anybody else is making up stories because that's how it looks. The final conversation on June 19th took place at 3:50 p.m. when Pierce called Smart. Smart almost immediately asked, did you find out what has been happening? Pierce mentions the police found a note Smart wrote to Flynn, the one that Sarah found. A series of 8 completely inaudible statements from Smart disrupts the flow of the conversation early in the tape, at which point Pierce says, supposedly my fingerprints were found on the thing and crap like that. It's unclear what she is referring to here. On July 12th and 13th, Pierce was fitted with a body wire to record 2 more conversations with Smart. The July 13th conversation exhibits similar sound problems, and Smart continues to speak rapidly. At different points in the tape, Smart alternates between either using the word fuck or shit exclusively for long stretches of the conversation. The tape stops and starts at least once early on in the conversation, and the volume dips in and out. So according to Mark Sisti, Smart's attorney, Smart knew Pierce was wired during this conversation. On the 4th tape, Pam apparently left her office and directly went to Cecilia Pierce, said Sisti. Pam and Cecelia both knew at the meeting that Cecelia was wired. The final tape was another taped conversation, August 1st at 10 a.m. Shortly after the conversation, Smart was arrested at the media center at Winnicott High School. The tapes were the first key piece of evidence for the jury in finding Smart guilty. There were two things that hung her, said Sisti. The second day of cross-examination and the Cecilia Pierce tapes. According to Sisti, one of the most damning things about the tapes was Smart herself. Now this is a quote. What was telling in the tapes was Pam saying, quote, if you tell the truth, we're all fucking going to jail, said Sisti. There was no question it was Pam's voice. The jury could recognize the voice and the sentences. With the key role the tapes played in finding Smart guilty, some around Pam have questioned their authenticity, both due to the inaudible portion and the fact, according to Wojcik, that the tapes were never authenticated. All right, so that's what we have regarding the story behind the Cecelia Pierce tapes. Now, very quickly, I'm going to go to Pamela Smart's statement that she issued to me exclusively from prison on the email service that they have. So this is not going to be Pamela Smart's voice responding. This is going to be what she wrote to me. I asked her to come up with a statement explaining the tapes away. So let me read this. Keep in mind, I am not altering this in any way. I am looking at the email that Pamela Smart sent me on November 19th, and this is word for word what she said to me regarding the Cecelia Pierce tapes. Here we go. When Bill and his friends were arrested for Greg's murder, I was in shock because I could not believe that Bill had killed Greg. I honestly thought they had arrested the wrong person. I felt like I needed some kind of proof to believe it. Looking back, I can now understand that I didn't want it to be true because I knew that if he did kill Greg, then it was my fault because of the relationship I had with him. I was already devastated because Greg was gone, and the added layer of being in any way at fault for Greg's death was too much to bear. I felt desperate to know if Bill had really done it. The police weren't giving me any information, and the only person who seemed to know anything was Cecelia Pierce. Every time I spoke with her, she revealed things she supposedly quote unquote heard or had been told about evidence and what had allegedly occurred. The more I spoke to her, the more she revealed, and yet she always held some back. I needed to know everything because I felt terrible about it all. I wasn't sleeping or eating because of the stress and grief were unbearable. I told Greg's best friend Brian and his girlfriend Tracy that I felt like Cecelia knew more than she was saying. I told them I wanted to act like I had known about the murder beforehand so she would think I had been in on it and she would speak more freely. They told me not to do that, but I ignored them and did it anyhow. And that is how the tapes came about. However, there's so much more to the tapes that never came out. First of all, large portions of the tapes were inaudible. Many of the things I said were cut out, and because large portions of the conversation were inaudible, many things were taken out of context. The tapes were never authenticated before they were supposedly enhanced. Years later, ABC News paid to have the tapes sent to an expert who formerly worked for the CIA. He analyzed the tapes and reported they contained abnormalities and unexplained starts and stops. Looking back, I should have listened to Greg's best friend and never spoken to Cecelia. However, I knew I wasn't guilty of planning or knowing about Greg's murder, so I didn't care. My focus was only on finding out what had really happened to Greg. So there you have it. In the words of Pamela Smart from prison, she explains how the Cecelia Pierce tapes came about. And the one thing I will say about her, she has certainly been vilified by the people in New Hampshire, by the people across the country. But the one thing that gets me is from day one, she has always maintained her innocence in the murder, but from day one, she never denied having an affair with the then 16-year-old William Flynn. So, if anything, to me, there's enough information out there that there could have been reasonable doubt in this case. So, I'm not here to make any position on whether or not Pamela Smart is guilty or innocent, but I do feel that she deserves another trial. I do feel that this case should be looked at again to ensure that the state got it right. And as I said earlier in the tapes, if you assume the worst with saying that, okay, Pamela Smart's been lying. Pamela Smart is guilty. She did everything that she is accused of doing, which was basically trying to convince and manipulate William Flynn to kill her husband. If that is true, and she was successful in manipulating Bill Flynn, the bottom line is she still did not pull the trigger. She still did not take the action to kill her husband. And Billy Flynn, the person allegedly who put a gun to Gregory Smart's head, there is some debate as to whether or not it was him. It may have been one of the other boys. But if, again, Pamela Smart is guilty of everything they said, but the killer, the gunman, the person that put the gun to Greg Smart's head and blew his brains out all over the foyer, if he is free, shouldn't Pamela Smart get a chance to argue for her innocence since everybody else involved is free and she is still in prison? And when you consider the alternative that, what if Pamela Smart is telling the truth? What if Billy Flynn was a jealous boyfriend who couldn't handle Pamela Smart having a husband, and he took it into his own hands to go and kill her, to kill him, and then to steal the contents of his place, and then go down to Hampton Beach and try to sell those items? What if Pamela Smart has spent over 30 years in prison for having an affair with a 16-year-old boy? I don't know, again, the truth in this case, but if anything, I've gotten to know Linda Wojcik, Pamela's mother, over the last couple of years. I've gotten to know Pamela Smart. She speaks pretty frankly to me when we talk. And I have, on more than one occasion, told her, I don't know what to think. I don't know if you are guilty, if you're innocent. But the way I look at it is, no matter what you think, whether she was guilty of everything or innocent, you kind of have to look at the case and look at that the four killers are out, then maybe she deserves a chance to, again, argue her case. So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to pass this on, and hopefully you enjoyed listening to this. Again, that is the quote directly from Pamela Smart from prison, explaining the Cecilia Pierce tapes, and that was the most damning evidence in the trial against her. So thank you for tuning into the Jon DiVito Show. I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And again, if you have any questions for me, or if you want me to ask any questions for Pamela Smart, please feel free to reach out to me via email at thejondevitoshow@gmail.com. Have a great day. And again, thank you for tuning in.